Good morning, everyone. Your Sunday weather briefing for this July 29th finds that there are some changes that I want to note today that could impact the start of trading for tonight. I'm seeing the models indicating some drier trends for the Corn Belt and the Northern Plains for the 11 to 15 day time frame. I'm not going to fight that model forecast this morning, although I do have some doubts that it is going to verify. I'll talk about that later on in the video. Also, I think that today's forecast overall for both the 6 to 10 and 11 to 15 day time frames has warmer trends in the Corn Belt and in the Plain States versus what I presented from back on Friday. There you can see my temperature and rainfall outlooks this morning. Certainly no heat in the near term forecast. That is going to be lasting for another 5 to 6 days in the middle of the country, but warmth is going to be reappearing for the 6 to 10 and 11 to 15 day time frames, and there you can see that both of those forecasts have trended warmer versus what I presented from back on Friday. For the 6 to 10 day period, not a lot of change versus what I presented back on Friday. A ring of fire activity going to be seen during the Corn Belt during that time frame. Certainly my 11 to 15 day forecast is drier than back on Friday. That is something that really matches the models right now. Model agreement is very good on below normal rainfall for the Corn Belt for the 11 to 15 day period. I do have some doubts about that, and I'll talk about that more later on in the video. UPF discussion for the 1 to 5 day time frame. No major disagreements with this forecast. Still have some very nice rains in the near term pattern, especially for today through Tuesday for southern and eastern portions of the Corn Belt and areas to the south of there. For the day 6 to 7 time frame for the Friday-Saturday period, this will be when we will start to see some ring of fire activity developing in the Corn Belt. I think that this model is, or this forecast is a pretty decent attempt to suggest where the best rains are going to fall. But keep in mind that when it comes to ring of fire activity, this is something that the models do not handle very well, much more than a couple of days in advance. I would not be surprised at all to see at least amounts in some areas of the Corn Belt be significantly bigger than what this map shows. It is a map that is going to be changing a lot in the days ahead. Some 48-hour rainfall totals through early on this Sunday. Rainfall event so far in the Corn Belt, maybe running a little bit less than what I had expected, but again, we still have several days to work through, and we have seen some nice amounts in portions of the southwestern Corn Belt. I think that it would be central portions of Nebraska into northeastern Kansas that has so far seen disappointing rainfall amounts, but again, it is a situation where we still have several days of rainfall to work through. As far as the early morning radar is concerned, you can see that some of the rain is still falling this morning across portions of the hard red winter wheat belt and into some sections of the southwestern Corn Belt. As far as the forecast is concerned, it is still an upper level low pressure system that is going to be bringing the rainfall chances to the southern Corn Belt and areas to the south of there in the near term. There's a look at that upper level low as it will look at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. The upper level low deepens a little bit more, doesn't move a whole lot as we get towards Tuesday morning. So even on Tuesday, we would be seeing additional significant rains for especially areas to the east of the Mississippi River in the Corn Belt and in the Mid-South. So looking at the near-term rainfall forecast for 7 o'clock this morning through 7 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday, you can still see that it is the central and southern Plains states, the southern Corn Belt, and areas to the south of there that is still favored for additional very nice rains in the near term. Note that for a lot of the area of the Corn Belt to the east of the Mississippi River, the bulk of their rainfall is not going to be falling until tomorrow and Tuesday, so we still have a lot of time before we get to the end of the rainfall event for those areas. But you can see some very nice model agreement on the type of rains that are going to be falling. Probably a lot of 3/4 of an inch to inch and a half rainfall amounts for a lot of the southern and eastern Corn Belt and areas to the south of there, with some locally heavier totals from 7 o'clock this morning through 7 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday. As far as your longer term rainfall forecast is concerned, for the period from Wednesday right through the end of the 10-day forecast, which today would take us out to August 7th, I'm not going to be dismissing some rain falling in some portion of the Corn Belt on any day during that period. I would think that the rainfall will be quite spotty in nature for Wednesday and Thursday in the Corn Belt, and significant on only a very localized basis, with a lot of the region getting nothing at all. Then as we get towards the 6 to 10 day period, which for today will extend from Friday through Tuesday, August 7th, that is going to be a time frame when I believe that we are going to be starting to see ring of fire thunderstorm activity in the Corn Belt. Again, that is the type of activity that the models handle very poorly with regards to details, much more than a few days in advance. but it's the type of weather pattern that in some areas can be producing significant or even heavy amounts of rainfall. I do think it can be a period when it would not be surprising at all to see some of this ring of fire activity on any day in the 6 to 10 day period. Just looking at a snapshot of a few days, look at the period from 7 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. European model there on the left, GFS model on the right, both indicating thunderstorm activity on the northeastern edge of a area of hot weather that is going to be seen at that time in the central portion of the plain states. Surface features as of this should be 7 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. This is mislabeled. This is 7 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. Again, you can see an area of thunderstorms indicated by the European model and by the GFS model at that time. Again, it would be ring of fire activity on the leading edge of some hot weather in central portions of the plain states. Then as we get towards the end of the 6 to 10 day period, looking at surface features as of 7 o'clock in the morning on August 7th, looking at not just the GFS and European models, but bringing in the Canadian model and the European ensemble as well. GFS and European models would have some agreement that it would be eastern portion of the Corn Belt favored for ring of fire thunderstorm activity at that time, but note from the Canadian operational model that it would have it more towards the northwestern portion of the Corn Belt. There you can see the area of hot weather in the Central Plains. Note how the European ensemble would suggest more extensive area of the Corn Belt seeing rainfall chances at that time. So the bottom line, I think that we are going to be seeing some ring of fire activity developing in the Corn Belt by the time we get to around Friday night. And for the rest of the 6 to 10 day period, it would not be surprising at all to see a daily threat of ring of fire activity somewhere in the Corn Belt. You can see from my 6 to 10 day time frame where I would favor the best amounts and the best coverage. And again, that is a type of activity that at least on a localized basis can be producing a lot of rain in portions of the Corn Belt. Now for the 11 to 15 day time frame, again, the models are in very good agreement this morning that we would see below normal rainfall in the Corn Belt for the 11 to 15 day time frame, and I'm not going to fight that model forecast given how much agreement there is. At the same time though, when I look at this upper level pattern, it is one that I believe that the models could be over exuberant on the type of dry weather that would be seen. Looking at 500 millibars early in the 11 to 15 day time frame, note the dome of high pressure still in its normal summertime location in southwestern portions of the nation, still a northwesterly flow aloft in the Corn Belt at that time. You can see a lot of above normal heights as well, so it would be a warm pattern along with that northwesterly flow aloft. A combination of warm temperatures and a northwesterly flow aloft in the Corn Belt in the summertime is one that oftentimes still means significant rainfall chances would be occurring. As we get towards latter portions of the 11 to 15 day period, still a dome of high pressure in southwestern portion of the nation. So clearly it's not a situation that dry and warm weather in the 11 to 15 day time frame is because of any sort of a widespread dome of high pressure in the Corn Belt. Any dome is still going to be in southwestern portion of the nation. You can also still see that we'd have above normal temperatures at that time given the above normal heights, and still still a northwesterly flow aloft in the Corn Belt at that time as well. So again, I'm not going to fight the models. They are in very good agreement on below normal rainfall for the 11 to 15 day period. Put a gun to my head though, and I'd have to believe that weather pattern is going to turn out wetter than the models suggest at this time. As far as temperatures are concerned, still no heat in the forecast for another 4 or 5 to as many as 6 days. Looking at your temperature anomalies for this Sunday, an extensive area of below normal temperatures in the middle of the country, even a big area of much below normal readings in the far western Corn Belt and into the central plains. That cool weather again will last through at least Thursday or Friday, but as we get towards Saturday, note that an abrupt change at that time to above normal temperatures across a big portion of the Corn Belt, especially the central and north, and even longer term, that heat is going to be lasting as we get towards the latter portion of the 11 to 15 day time frame. Note the good model agreement of extensive areas of above normal temperatures favoring a big portion of the Corn Belt and areas to the north of there for that time frame. Throughout the 2 week time frame, it's not an overly hot forecast for the mid-south and southeast, but even there though, the bulk of their cool weather is going to be occurring during week 1. So any cool weather in the forecast for the Corn Belt for the next 4 to 5 days, a decidedly warm pattern after that with a forecast overall warmer than what I presented from back on Friday. Internationally, for your Sunday, below normal rainfall going to be extensive across the summer row crop areas of the former Soviet Union for the next 2 weeks. A lot of that main growing area probably seeing little or nothing for the next 10 days. Not an extremely hot weather pattern, but temperatures overall running above normal. The biggest part of the heat with respect to normal coming in the near term. For the European rainfall forecast, decent rains over the next 2 weeks in Poland. Still wonderful rains over the next 2 weeks for the southeastern corn growing areas. But other than that, this is a decidedly dry and very warm weather pattern for the European area, especially Central and Western Europe for the next 2 weeks. Don't be surprised at all that to see most of France see almost nothing in the way of rainfall for at least the next 10 days. Again, it is a forecast that features a lot of warmth as well. Looking at your high temperatures from back on Friday, as expected, an extensive area of 90 plus degree heat, in some areas getting above 95 in Germany and also in France. Overall, I would call the temperature forecast coming up as warmer than what it looked back from back on Friday. It still looks like temperatures are going to be running easily above normal for the duration of the 2 week time frame all across Europe, and that matches my forecast from back on Friday. But I do think that 90 plus degree highs are going to be a lot more common across Germany and France for the next 10 days versus what I suggested from back on Friday. Over in the spring grain areas of the former Soviet Union, some decent rain is going to be falling there over the next 10 days across a lot of that area. Looking at China for the next 2 weeks, fairly decent rainfall going to be seen in Heilongjiang, otherwise below normal rainfall for the rest of that growing area. Heilongjiang in particular will be seeing some nice rains over the next 5 to 6 days for the North China Plain, their driest period of weather probably coming up for about Tuesday through the weekend. Lots of above normal temperatures for especially the next week or 10 days across a lot of southern Manchuria and into the North China Plain as well, equating to plenty of days in which highs above 90 will be widespread and extensive. 10-day rainfall forecast for the Canadian prairies, not featuring too much in the way of rainfall, and that would be especially as you go further south. To the north of there, some fairly decent rains coming up over the next 10 days. Australian wheat forecast near to below normal rainfall for the next 2 weeks. Any sort of decent rains during that time frame, mainly in South Australia and into Victoria. And finishing up for this morning, the Indian monsoon looks quite weak coming up. You can see that any above normal rainfall in India for the next 2 weeks going to be confined to just the northeast. A big part of India, including basically all of their groundnut, oilseed, soybean, and cotton areas, looking at pretty extensive area of below normal rainfall for the duration of the 2 week time frame. That's what I have for your Sunday. Everyone have themselves a great rest of the weekend, and we'll talk to you again early tomorrow morning.